at the outset, I must thank all the management, the members of the college for inviting me to this prestigious webinar. And the topic on which I am going to speak is Mahasweta Devi's Dalit consciousness, a study in her major short stories. Women in our society are always looked down upon and are considered as seconds or inferior human beings. Since ages, they have been crushed by the male-dominated society and are denied a respectable status. They always experience a continuous trauma under male subjugation. Now, one critic has observed, Ram Ahuja, in spite of the legislative measures adopted in favor of women in our society after independence, the spread of education and women's gradual economic independence, countless women still continue to be victims of violence. They are beaten, kidnapped, raped, burnt, and murdered. Unquote. Women is not as free and secure as man. She has been a victim to both psychological and physical affliction. However, the post-era has strengthened and given wide scope to writers, especially women writers. They have started questioning the age-old oppression and expressing their anger and frustration over the issues of women's exploitation in their writings. Mahasweta Devi, one of the leading Indian women writers, has been the winner of several national awards like Sahitya Academy, Gyanpith, Padma Shri, and many others for her plays, novels, short stories, etc. She has been a social activist fighting for justice to the marginalized, dispossessed tribal communities in India. Her writings portray women as sufferers of the politics of gender, class, and caste played at various levels of social relationships. Her stories are studying brutality and degradation wreaked on women for centuries. She writes with a view to exposing the evils inherent in the socio-economic and political system of the post-colonial India. Her writings are marked with social consciousness and commitment, with a strong urge to improve the situation. She, in a way, emerges as a champion of the proletariat, landless laborers, peripherals, the poor, and the subaltern class of Indian society. She focuses on different phases of suffering the women undergo in the society. She does not write as a feminist, but as a human being who narrates the realities of human trauma. She explicates the problems of women and the misery they undergo in a male-dominated society and presents them in a works like Mother of Ayar Chaurasi, Breast Stories, Bitter Soil, Titu Meer Outcast, etc. In an interview, she says, quote, I am a woman and I am writing, but I am not writing of women alone. What I am writing, most of my books, it is about class exploitation. The underclass is exploited, men, women together. Of course, women get worst part of it, but not always. Definitely, I am interested in women's positions, women's thought, but I am more interested in active work. While creative writing is only one side of Mahasweta Devi, there are several other dimensions to her personality as a social activist, reporter, editor, etc. All these facets of her personality considered together distinguish her from her contemporaries. She always felt that a creative writer should have a social conscience. He or she has a duty towards society, and the sense of duty is an obsession. Her works move between fiction, history, ethnography, and reportage, providing a crucial antidote to the three vexed problems: bonded labor, women and development, and sex trade. Most of her stories seem to be extension of her activism. Dholi, one of the stories from Mahasweta Devi's collection of short stories, Outcast, centers around Dholi. She is one of such Dalit women who are tortured at the hands of upper class. The Mishras, the so-called elite class of the society, have not only ruined her, but also some other girls belonging to the lower castes like Dusad, Ganju, Dhobi, etc. Mahasweta Devi, through her short stories, tries to bring to focus the atrocities against the Dalit women, where women are stripped of their honor and compassion and are treated as commodity. Dholi too is treated in the same fashion. As she was a widow, she was not allowed to look in a mirror, to wear bangles, a dot of sindoor on her forehead. Though she was attractive, she could not marry again, nor she could sing wedding songs. However, she did not remember when she was married, but she knew only that much, that her father had died repaying the loan which he had taken for the marriage of his daughter. She was very much conscious of the social gap. She was a Dusadin, and Mishri Lal, with whom she was in love, belonged to the higher strata of society. Moreover, it was a regular practice for the upper castes to ruin the lives of the girls belonging to Dalit class. But it was always the women who had to bear the brunt of the society. Quote, "It's always the fault of the women for not considering a Brahmin's honor. She is even more to blame." Unquote. Here too, the whole responsibility lies with Dolly. Her kinsfolk had rejected her because she was not supposed to fall in love, and she had fallen in love, and that too with a Brahmin boy, ignoring
Sorry
the
for
men of
interruption, sir. Sir, could you, if you could hear me, could you please adjust your camera in a way we could see you? Now, actually, we could see you upside down.
I think it is
No,
better now. Yeah.
no.
Hello.
Could you please flip it? It is, I think, put vertically. Could you keep it horizontally?
I think it is now. I am visible. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the angle, sir. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. There were several illegitimate Mishra children growing up in the Dusad Ganju Dhobi families, quarters, and such mothers and their children, if supported by the Mishras, were treated well by the villagers. Otherwise, they were blamed and even thrown out of the villages. Mishri Lal loved Dholi too much, but he had his own limitations. He could not go beyond the wishes of his family. His helplessness is apparent when he says, "Dholi, my beloved, why were you born in Dusadin?" So she, along with her mother, was boycotted by their community. Dolly's mother was very much disturbed by the impending doom and so repeatedly asked her to abort the child. But she was not ready for that, and ultimately she gave birth to a son. With the help of Shanichari, the midwife, she tried to restore the prestige of Dolly by informing Nishrilal's mother, but she refused, and rather she created some misunderstanding between Dholi and Mishrilal. Besides, Mishrilal was not as bold as his elder brother Kundan, who had given Jhalo, another girl of the same community, sons, a house, and a piece of land. So she could not own Dholi completely. Dholi was so angry at his cowardice that she could not control herself. Says, you have ruined my life. Devta, does it hurt to hear a few home truths? Or are all rich people like you so thin-skinned? Even Dholi's attempt to work somewhere to earn her livelihood could not materialize, as nobody was ready to employ her, thinking that if anybody gave her a job, the so-called upper caste would be annoyed. Her mother too lost her patience. She says, "Wretched female, if you can't do anything else, why don't you kill yourself?" Quote, Dolly, being hurt by this, tried to commit suicide by drowning herself under a waterfall. But her fate had planned something else for her. She also compromised with the situation and joined the flesh trade. She was ultimately banished from the village. Though her mother suggested her stay with Mishri Lal's brother, Kundan, and there was no need of leaving the village, she retorted that she was going to be a professional bore instead of a private one. And by doing that, she would be a part of community. Here the writer has tried to prove that the collective strength of the society was far more powerful than an individual's strength. She has realistically presented the atrocities suffered by Dolly in the androcentric society. Besides being a Dalit, she also became the victim of the class gap in the society. The story is marked with paradigm of dialectics of the dominance and resistance between the oppressor and the oppressed, the central and the peripheral, the haves and the have-nots. Dolly from the beginning has been portrayed as revolting against the social setup, though to improve her lot was beyond her power. Her moving away from the village to the marketplace in Ranchi is a slur on the face of the society, which claims to be a part of socialist, secular, republic state with justice, social, economic, and political rights to its citizens, and assuring the dignity of human life. The writer has also highlighted the age-old beliefs related to a widow, what they are supposed to do and what not. Mahasweta Devi in her short story Titu Mir also depicts the position of a woman in patriarchy. Mamuna, Titu Mir's wife, is neglected by her husband. He is always busy with his revolutionary activities and never thinks of her welfare. He leaves her with her parents and moves to different places without intimating her. Though she experiences different types of trauma, she never protests against her husband. She endures everything with patience. Once, when Titu was leaving for Mecca to meet a Muslim leader and he wished to have her consent, she politely replied, "Have I ever said no to anything you have wanted to do? Have I ever stood in your way?" So I thought how far away that is. You went to work for the Jamindar, and I thought how far he tries to explain to him the grief and worry she experienced when he had gone far away from her. She says, "You went to Calcutta and then you went to jail, which I cannot even visualize how I worried myself to death." Quote, though she expresses her sorrow for their separation for a long time, he is not at all interested in listening to her woes and sorrows. She lives throughout an isolated life. Dopadi, one of Devi's best stories, centers around the central character Dopadi. She may not pronounce her name, hence Dopadi. Her Brahmin mistress gave this name to her at birth. She and her husband Bulinle Mejan work as farmlands. They were the chief instigators in the murder of Surat Sahu, their landlord who occupied upper caste wells and 2 wells during the drought. Both of them faked their own death and escaped. For a long time, they were underground in Neanderthal darkness. At last, Dulna was killed and Dobdi was also caught. She was gang raped by the men in uniform, following the instructions of Senanayak, make her do the needful. Draupadi in the story acquires a new identity. The process of acquisition involves an escape from the limitations, vulnerabilities, and clumsiness of the physical body into a new consciousness. The mutilation and violent abuse of her body did not make her abjectly surrender. She defies her torturer and tormentor Senanayak. She refuses to be clothed after the sexual exploitation and prefers to be naked. He was stunned at her dignity when she refused to comply in performing her duties as a subservient woman. He expected that Draupadi would beg and plead for mercy, but she, after being raped and beaten, did not succumb to her bodily cravings of thirst and remained silent. Draupadi, in defiance of her tortures, refuses to give them that satisfaction of seeing her begging. When the soldiers had her a pot of water, she chooses to pour it on the ground rather than satisfying her thirst. This act is a deliberate act of defiance. This was quite shocking for Senanayak because of his male chauvinism. Draupadi, in a way, tells Senanayak that her spirit cannot be destroyed, and she transcends her gender limitations. She made her mangled body a powerful weapon of resistance that can never be destroyed with the words, "There is not a man here that I should be ashamed. What more can you do? Come on, counter me, come on." She is not ashamed of her condition, as she knew it very well that to be ashamed is to satisfy Senanayak's male ego. Moreover, her defiant attitude overwhelms and frightens him. In a stunning transformation, the powerless tribal woman challenges the entire power of a ruthless post-colonial state embodied in figure of Senanayak. Draupadi looks like a victim, but acts like an agent. Indeed, the binary of victim and agent falls apart as Draupadi effectively separates violation from victimhood. As she stands insistently naked before her violators, Draupadi manages to wield her wounded body as a weapon to terrify them. By refusing the disciplinary power of shame scripted into the act of rape, Draupadi becomes a terrifying super object. In the words of Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, thus we find that she is a representation of a female figure ready to stand up for her rights and her beliefs. She, faced with a situation that could make any woman go mad, uses her plight to her advantage. to make her torturer and mad and confused. Mahasweta Devi, through the story, presents the nature of female experiences under the mechanism of male oppression. Draupadi's extraordinary mental strength is apparent when she refuses to be clothed. Most unlike other women of her class, she does not accept her stereotyped role, generally assigned to women belonging to lower strata of society. Rather, she becomes an activist, challenging the patriarchal norms of the society. Her character has been created outside the domestic sphere. She transcends social definition of femininity. Draupadi is a revised and demythicized incarnation of the epical Draupadi. In her reincarnation, she is placed within contemporary historical contexts where her ancestry is treated to Champa Bhumi of Bengal, and her present status is described to be that of an activist of the Naxalite movement of the 70s in the northern part of West Bengal, a fugitive on the run from the police. Dopadi is a gendered subaltern. As a woman belonging to the lowest of the low economic class, she is subjected to double subalternization. Her subaltern status is further mixed by the grotesque working of her caste. The stories in breast stories, Draupadi, behind the bodies, and breast giver have one connecting thread, the breast, which is a metaphor for the exploitation of women from marginalized communities. Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak has rightly pointed out that the breast is far more than a symbol in all these stories. It is the means of harshly dictating an exploitative social system. In her story, Breast Giver, Mahasweta Devi outlines women's identity as body, worker, and object. In A Tale of a Bengali Wet Nurse, Devi shows female protagonist Jashoda living in 1960s India as she is compelled to take up professional motherhood when her Brahmin husband loses both his feet. The story dramatizes the exploitation and gruesome death of Jashoda, who works as a wet nurse in the upper caste household of the Haldar family. Jashoda's cancerous body in the closing sequence of the story, especially the phrase, the sores on her breast, kept mocking her with 100 mouths, 100 eyes. It is the stage of forbearance and the power of motherhood in professional context. Jashoda suffers a painful and sickened death. Her plentiful breasts now become a gaping wound. She did not get the food and survival source from Haldar's house as they parted here and there. She got cancer in her breast only because of the fact that she had borne 20 children and suckled 50. Kangali Charan, her husband, came to support her, but it was too late. She is destined to die with breast cancer. Moreover, she was no more of use to Kangali. He also
Extremely
shifted.
sorry to interrupt, sir. Sunita Saraswat, in case you can hear me, then kindly stop presenting. We cannot properly see our resource person Neeraj Kumarji because your screen is present on the screen. Your private charts are also visible.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah.
Am I not visible? Yeah, hello. Hello.
Yeah, you are visible, sir. Yeah, now it is all right. Yeah.
Okay. Kangali Charan, her husband, came to support her, but it was too late. And moreover, she was no more of use to Kangali. He also shifted his love to another woman, Golapi, though she betrayed him at the end. The writer justifies the Jashoda's existential struggle with such a condition. She showed him her bare left breast thick with running sores and said, "See these sores. Do you know how these sores smell? What will you do with me now? Why did you come to take me?" In quote. It is the biggest question over the patriarchal system. She became mother to all and left them all helpless to help her. Best experience for female is the experience of her own existence. Jashoda did not lack being female. She was able to challenge the social structure that it could not defy her as she became a spiritual figure, mother. The theme of oppressive hegemony built into both spiritual practice and economic belief resonates in all the narratives of the women in breast stories. Now, Behind the Bodies is the last of the stories of the collection Breast Stories, at the center of which are Gangor, a migrant laborer, and Yupin, a well-to-do photographer who makes Gangor's breast an object of his photography. The story spins around Upin's senseless obsession with Gangore's breasts. He compares them with his wife Sheetal's silicone implants, which are unnatural and devoid of any interest to him. Mahasweta Devi considers this story a parable of India after decolonization. India is a hired mother, abused and exploited by various hegemonic groups and classes. The landlords, capitalists, bureaucrats, diasporics, and ideologues of the new state flourishing on the culture of silence, the passive, unarticulated suffering of the people at large. She has grown weak and tired, feeding these ungrateful hoodlums, and will be consumed by cancer if not assisted scientifically and sustained by those who have benefited by her. Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, who is also the translator of Istandaini into English, extends the parable to interpret the end of the story. Quote, the ideological construct of India is too deeply informed by the goddess-infested reverse sexism of the Hindu majority. As long as there is this hegemonic cultural self-representation of India as a goddess mother, she will collapse under the burden of the immense expectations that such a self-representation permits. Unquote. Thus, we find that Mahasweta Devi, in most of her short stories, has highlighted the states of the marginalized, Dalits, tribals, and the flaws in our socio-economic system. But a ray of hope is always there to wake up our conscience. One such example is of Dopadi in the story Draupadi. As in the epic The Mahabharata, in this story, Dopadi Mejan's undaunted spirit of resistance is exemplary. The story tells how a tribal woman had to pay the price for her involvement with an Naxalite movement. And even being brutally raped, she stood firm on her stand till the end. As a social activist, her involvement with the people at the grassroots level, her practical experience of living with the lower communities gave her the impetus to write for them, for stimulating their struggling spirit and articulate the demands for overall betterment. As a humanist, Mahasweta Devi has the ability to communicate across languages and cultures the simplest, the starkest realities of the lives of India's dispossessed, which left many in awe. Devi herself rightly confesses, I have always believed that the real history is made by ordinary people. I constantly come across the reappearance in various forms of folklore, ballads, myths, and legends carried by ordinary people across generations. The reason and inspiration for my writing are those people who are exploited and used and yet do not accept defeat. For me, the endless source of ingredients for writing is in these amazing, noble, suffering human beings. Unquote. Indeed, Mahasweta Devi is one of the most remarkable writers and social activists of India who fought through her writings for the rights of those who are the most downtrodden and oppressed in our society. The migrant and the destitute, tribals and Dalits, communities of criminals and marginals. Her writings addressed one single word, injustice. G.N. Devi, a writer and activist, rightly says, wherever she saw what she thought was injustice, she plunged into the struggle and never looked back. Her fiction sets different standards of aesthetics, standards which are counter-canonical and almost anti-literary. Spivak, in her essays, has created a critical discourse around Mahasweta Devi from the post-colonial subaltern perspective. Spivak's critique emerges as a means of both understanding and combating the oppression of such indigenous people to whom she refers to as the subaltern. Spivak theorizes the characters of the tribal men and women in Mahasweta's texts as subaltern. Now, to conclude, Mahasweta Devi, through her short stories, opens up the problems of women which have been afflicting them continuously and causing a great damage to their lives and womanhood. Since ancient times, a woman has been restricted to a kind of life and has been undergoing different ordeals of life. Her freedom has been curtailed and has been suppressed. Man has taken an upper hand over her and her status is reduced. His dominance and bestiality are unquestioned. She has been and is undergoing both psychological and physical harassment in his hands. She has been a victim of patriarchy, widowhood, prostitution, and harassment. Mahasweta Devi has succeeded in bringing all these elements to focus. She protests against the atrocities of men over women who are deprived of freedom and status. She was always drawn to the people who led a subhuman existence, people with no access to education or healthcare, etc. For her, it was imperative to make an attempt to tear the curtain of darkness, see the reality that lies beyond, and see our own true faces in the process. Moreover, what we find is that though we have become free from the shackles of the long drawn slavery of the English, the socio-economic justice is still a daydream in the lives of common masses, especially the subalterns. The gap between the ruler and the ruled, the upper caste and the lower caste, has widened. The slavery still persists, only its form has changed. And the only reason is our mindset. Unless we change it, we are still slaves in one way or the other. Besides, the writer has also focused on the typical Indian society with its peculiar form of caste system, which divides human beings into higher caste and lower caste. Dalits were commonly segregated and kept away from the participation in Hindu social activities, but with the spread of education, they started expressing their aversion for and anger against the established unequal social system in their writings. Now, Mahasweta Devi has surpassed all other Dalit writers, Mulk Rajanand, Arundhati Roy, and even Arvind Adiga, as hers is a more pungent attack on the society. We can take one example. On the one hand, she has expresses the mindset of the Brahmins. You should have fun with every Dalit female and at the same time keep everyone under your control. While on the other, she lashes out at the society while delineating the character of the Holly, who decides to become a professional whore instead of a private one. It was a way of revolting against the social norms prevalent in our society. She is closer to baby Kamble and Om Prakash Valmiki, who in their writings, The Prisons We Broke and Juthan, respectively, have depicted the ugly faces of our society. The Indian Constitution, though gives equal rights to all human beings, the attitude and social behavior towards Dalits have not changed even today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. This is really an enriching session, and we are getting several nice feedbacks from the audience. Hello?
Yes.
Yes, sir. So we have got a question. We have got a question from a research scholar from Osmania University, Hyderabad, and Vyomkeshi Sri. So the question is that, are these counter narratives counters to the neo-colonial rules too?
Yeah, to some extent, we can say that just counters. Because these writers have also tried to depict the real picture of the society. And in a way, they have shown the mirror to the society that what actually we are and what we are doing in the society, the social structures. That's why the last sentence of my that is still we have given so many powers to the women, to the citizens of the society, but still our mindset has not changed, and we are still looking for that day when the women, or especially the subaltern women, will be treated on the same platform in the same fashion. Hello. 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 Am I audible? Yeah.
Oh, can you
Hello.
hear me now, sir?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, sir. So, sir, there is another question that is from Arnab Panda. And the question is, how reliable a narrative about marginalized section of our society, which are coming from outsiders' point of view, And so this is a very age-old classical question, that how come an
Yeah.
outsider who does not belong to this section, and how come their narratives be authentic enough?
Yeah.
Are not these stories acting in a way as a kind of sanctioned dissent that merely help to retain the status quo? What do you think about it?
In fact, these narratives are very much helpful. If we just see that there's so many writers belonging to this Dalit class, or Dalit literature, which we broadly speak about, and they are writing, and all the writings are putting, in a way or the other, the Dalit consciousness, because people are becoming more and more conscious, and I think they are changing also. With the passage of time, they have changed and they are changing still. There is a scope for change. So I think these narratives are very helpful in just solving the problem and establishing a balance in the society.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. So we have another question, and this is from Nanhi Priya from JD Women's College, Patliputra University. And the question is, to this day, the situation for women is still shocking. Globally, at least 1 in 3 women experience violence in their lifetime. So my question is, do you think that the current feminist revolts fulfill their advocacy role on women's rights and social awareness?
I think the question is very relevant to the present day context. And as I told you earlier also, that theorizing is one aspect. We theorize so many things in literature and with the help of narratives. But the practical aspect is that we have to change our mindset. And however, we can say that we are writing this much and we are speaking on the public platform. But unless this mental state or the mindset, it will be better to call it mindset, we change it, nothing is going to change in the society. And only theoretical aspects will remain there, and nothing in practical or in society is visible. We have so many instances in society when we have seen that women have suffered a lot, no? Like sexual harassment and sexual abuse. So many cases are there. But still we cannot say that our society is absolutely free from these malpractices. And the only reason is that we have to be alert, we have to change the steps. Only then we can think of some sort of revolution in society.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much. Then we have another question from Christiana Benedict. And the question is that Mahasweta Devi was a humanist and not a feminist. What according to you do make her humanist and not a feminist?
Because I think number of critics have also pointed out, and I also think that wherever she found some sort of injustice, she took the situation in the hand and fought against that situation. So she not only fought as a feminist, so her humanist approach was, I think, at the top, and she was more apparent, her humanism than her feminism. And in her short stories, not only her short stories, but almost all her writings, the writings which I have gone through, I have felt that she posed herself and she presented herself more as a humanist than as a feminist. So, because she couldn't tolerate the injustice done to humanity in general, and especially the women folk. So, she may be termed as a humanist. This is my view.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Hello? Hello?
Sorry, sir. My microphone was switched off.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
So there are a few other questions as well.
I think they can ask in WhatsApp also, the mail also, if they wish. The persons, my mail is there, and because I had to skip because in the beginning there was some technical problem. So I
Yes,
just,
sir.
in order to use the time factor, time sense, because so that the other speaker may not have problem. So you just ask them that they may share the questions on WhatsApp or my email. I will be answering those questions. Uh,
Okay.
once again, I would like to thank all of you, the principal of the college, Mr. Pushpaj Gautam, and all the faculty members of Department of English and all the staff of the college. Thank you very much.
Sir, we thank you. We